Okay, hold on. Just wait. Wait a minute. I missed something major in the last chapter. Okay? Now, I have to apologize for that. Chapter 1080, spoilers and all that. I got distracted by the climax involving Garp. Okay? I think, like, because Garp did what he did at the end, like, the One Piece could have been revealed in the last chapter. Like, hey, if you reread the chapter, Oda very clearly revealed the One Piece treasure on page 4, but I would have completely forgotten about it because of Garp showing up, like, surface to air garping the entire island, okay? Like, okay, so you can forgive me for that. I think a lot of people got distracted by that. Very epic scene from Garp, but I completely missed. I mean, I talked about it in the review, but I didn't realize Oda just made the strongest devil fruit ever in the last chapter. I think a lot of us kind of like noticed the devil fruit was really powerful, the one that Avalo Pizarro now wields. I mean, we got to see Vasco's and, you know, the whip lady from Sword, Kujaku, and Prince Groose that has the clay fruit, which we got to talk about that. That'll be the next devil fruit I talk about. There's a lot of devil fruits to discuss now. We got a bunch of devil fruits from Blackbeard's crew. Ironically enough, we still do not know Lafitte's devil fruit, and his one, he has some kind of, like, fruit that allows him to have wings. It could just be a pigeon zone, or it could be like the angel mythical zone for all we know. So actually his is the only one we don't know about yet, but we know all about the Blackbeard devil fruits now, and we also know about some devil fruits from Sword, so a lot of devil fruit discussions will be coming your way in the future. But before we talk about devil fruits, well, we have to talk about this devil fruit, but it's not only just a devil fruit, ladies and gentlemen. No, it is also geography. That's right! Oda finally did it! He made the geography fruit! I sprained my ankle. Ow. People ask me, hey, Tekking, why don't you do Tekking tumbles anymore? Why don't you do all that wacky stuff you used to do? Back in my old Bleach reviewing days. I was in my early 20s then, ladies and gentlemen. Nowadays, I'm getting up in years. Anyway, Avalo Pizarro now has the power of the Shima Shima no Mi, or the Island fruit. And I wasn't kidding around. Like, when I read the chapter for the first time, I noticed, like, immediately, that is an extremely powerful ability. Like, I don't think I need to, like, explain why. In the One Piece world, you know, I don't have most of this filled out, but at least in the East Blue, you know, most of the One Piece world is an ocean, like a big super ocean, only divided by the, I guess in theory, One Piece, really, it's just two oceans, with the red line dividing it. So there's a lot of islands, and if you have the power of the island fruit, that can lead to some pretty big chaos. I brought up a thing in the chapter, like, does this just give you the ability to control, like, any island you're on, like, regardless of the size of the island? Because Hachinosu is really not all that big compared to a lot of other islands we've seen in the story. Maybe Hachinosu is, like, similar in size to, like, Egghead Island. They look kind of similar like that. And in fact, they actually have a lot of things in common. They have, like, a town below and then a large structure above. In the case with Hachinosu, they have the Skull Mountain, and then Egghead has the Labosphere and everything like that. But, like, Hachinosu, Egghead, they're not even close to as big as, like, Wano was. And then, like, Alabasta's, like, a really big island as well. You know, like, Skypiea was a sizable island, so it's just like all these islands that exist. Even with Skypiea, like, Sky Islands exist, right? So does all Avalo Pizarro have to do to use his power as the island fruit to assimilate with an island and control it? Like we saw in the chapter where he can control the Skull Mountain and make it talk like a human being. Does all he have to do is just take one step on the island and then he's assimilated with the island and then he can do whatever he wants with it? Because that is kind of broken. And I really did get distracted from that by the end of the chapter with Garp arriving and just like, whoa, this is insane. Now, I'm not worried for Garp right now. I'm not worried that, like, oh no, Avalo Pizarro can control the entire island. Garp, he's going to be outmatched. Like, no way. Do you think Garp cannot punch out an island? Actually, he already kind of did. Here's a fun little fact. During the chapter, we got to it was revealed that when Avalo Pizarro fuses with Hachinosu, what the island feels is what he feels. He can feel like the people on the island. Because remember, when he was the Skull Mountain, he was like, I feel a small tickle in my left chest area. That's where we kept all of the prisoners. They must have escaped. They're running about. You know what I mean? So he could feel the escaped prisoners and like Kobe and everybody running around the island. So if the idea of humans running around the island is like a light tickle to Avalo Pizarro when he's fused with the island, what do you think it's going to feel like when Garp just drops a freaking... the galaxy? What's going to happen when Garp literally creates a new galaxy, a new heavenly body right there at ground zero of Hachinosu Island? You know? So Avalo Pizarro might just be knocked out in the next chapter, and I just like oh, and just like that's basically the opener, devastating the island and just knocking out Avalo Pizarro immediately. All right, so that we're gonna have to see that, right? So I'm not worried for Garp. I'm not concerned, but I am very, very intrigued by all the little facets of the island fruit. So we're gonna go into those today. Okay, first things first. As we're like 7 minutes into the video, first things first, a lot of people brought up the paradox, as it were, like, well, wait a second here. If Avalo Pizarro is fusing and like becoming an island, islands like are in water, they're submerged, most of the island is underwater, which would therefore mean when Avalo Pizarro becomes an island, most of his body is underwater, therefore he should be weakened by the natural devil fruit weaknesses. So why didn't that happen? I'm like, okay, I actually have like a decent line of like logic on why that doesn't affect Avalo Pizarro the way it does, okay? And it basically is like, okay, does it count as Avalo Pizarro's actual physical body turning into the island, or Avalo Pizarro just merging his physical body somewhere on the island and then he's able to mess with things around it? Like, look at it like with Pika, because Pika's devil fruit, the Ishi no Mi, the stone assimilation fruit, is the only other devil fruit in One Piece that really has an ability that's similar to this. I went through all the other Paramecias. There are some devil fruits like Senor Pink's swim fruit that allows him to like swim around in solid matter. There's Bluino's door fruit that he opens doors through anything. But like when it comes to actually like melding your body, like assimilating your flesh with an inanimate object, like becoming one with something, like some kind of structure, the only other fruit we really have to go on, like that's the focus of the power, is Pika's Ishi no Mi, which is why I think the Pika's fruit and Avalo Pizarro's fruit are like the upgraded, downgraded versions of it, okay? Pika was able to merge with any stone structure. It had to be stone or rock or some kind of mineral, and in the case with Avalo Pizarro, it's literally anything on the island. We saw him merge with the mountain, but we also saw his face appearing out of the wood that was in the rooms inside of the mountain fortress, okay, which are man-made constructs, okay? So if you build a house on the island that Avalo Pizarro has the fruit and he controls, then he can appear in that house, even though the house is not like a naturally occurring thing. So it is the upgraded form of that, okay? So like with Pika, like when he was the giant stone, a colossus that was attacking Dressrosa, and Zoro was like slicing him apart like into halves and then into fourths, into eighths or whatever. Eventually, Pika's real physical body emerged. So that's the way I picture this. I picture that somewhere, it's just on a larger scale, somewhere on the island, Avalo Pizarro merged with it. So his flesh and blood body is still somewhere there. And remember, that was the whole focus of Zoro. Zoro kept hacking up the stone because he's like, I need to find his physical body. But it's like hitting a needle in a haystack, right? Like Pika had this giant stone mountain body that was like several hundred feet high, and it was like, so many like metric, like square miles of just pure Pika. And so being able to target his actual flesh and blood body in that is going to be pretty difficult. So he just started hacking it apart, right? So with Avalo Pizarro, it's an even bigger haystack and an even smaller needle, okay? So somewhere on the actual island is Avalo Pizarro's real body. It's like melded with the earth or the stone or whatever, and then he can have his face appear on the mountain, or he can look through the eyes of any structure on the island itself. And remember, we said this in the review, and the idea is, like Hachinosu is not really all that crazy when it comes to like different climates or regions. Like I said, it's really not that big of an island. So it's got like the rocky port, and then it's got that town that's made out of like stone buildings, and then the mountain. It doesn't really seem to have a lot of forests. There's palm trees that are dotted around it, but nothing really crazy. It doesn't like have a jungle. It doesn't seem to have like a lake, or like other than that mountain, it doesn't have like an Arctic region or anything like that. It's not like with Wano and all the different regions of Wano. Okay, so if you think about it, though, if he's able to assimilate with, like, anything on the island, if you had an island like Wano, which Wano might actually be the exception to that, because Wano is like, well, all of Wano is technically on the side of Mount Fuji. So I guess, yeah, if Avalo Pizarro merged with Wano, I guess, actually, he might be able to gain access to Pluton, which is under the island. See, this is the crazy stuff you come to here. But anyway, yeah, his physical body is not submerged in water, so that's how you get around that, okay? So, obviously, other than that, the fruit just wouldn't work. You know, if it's like, I will now merge with the island, meow, and then he merges with the island, and it's like, I'm half in water, I can't move, you know? So, obviously, that wasn't the case. He was not weakened purely by being merged with the island, right? So then we get to the question, though, of, like, how big is the range here? Like, could he just merge with Wano and control all of Wano, the region that we saw during the arc, but also all of Mount Fuji, all the way down to where Pluton is hidden? You know, could he just control all of that? Could he just step onto Alabasta and control all of the cities and just destroy the whole island, like just rent it asunder with earthquakes and sandstorms or whatever he wanted, because he has complete control, that kind of jazz? So I want to ask you guys a question, all right? It's not that he doesn't have the ability to do that or the potential to do something like that, but there might be a few caveats to this. So let me just start by asking you this question. Do you think that as soon as Pika ate his fruit, the Ishi Ishinomi, as soon as Pika ate that fruit, he was able to turn himself into a giant mountain colossus like we saw in Dressrosa? I don't think he was able to do that right at the very beginning. Just like with any devil fruit, it takes some practice, some training with it, okay? Now, Avalo Pizarro is one of the 10 Titanic captains. He was a level 6 prisoner. Blackbeard invited him on his crew, which could indicate that, yeah, Avalo Pizarro is a very strong character already, okay? So even if he just got his fruit a little while ago, he's just that powerful with it, and it seems like they're hunting for devil fruits that are specific for the user. You know, like Augur having the warp fruit is perfect. Burgess having the strength fruit, the Riki Riki no Mi, is perfect, okay? So, like, Burgess probably had, like, an advanced learning, like, just, like, with the fact that it was a strength-based fruit. He's just like, oh, wait, yeah, I can lift even more. You know, he was already freakishly strong, so having a fruit that makes him even stronger, it's like he's going to be well fitted for that, like, you know, just, like, high spec for that kind of fruit. So maybe it was this Shiryu using the invisibility fruit to attack from behind. He was already like that, okay? He was already like a scheming kind of like attack you, stab you from behind kind of person, okay? Now, when it comes to Pizarro, we don't really know much about his backstory other than he was the corrupt king of Avalo Pizarro in the North Blue. Might have actually had something to do with the Germa, maybe, because, you know, North Blue, corrupt king, you know, maybe, who knows exactly what that happened with there. I think there was this one time he was trying to take over this resort in the Grand Line, and he got attacked by a monkey. I don't know, but that's something. I might be misremembering something right there. Anyway, maybe it was just like, oh yes, meow, the island fruit, that's the one that's perfect for me, you know. And so he just kind of, maybe he knew about it, maybe just like how Blackbeard was studying the encyclopedia and knew all about the Yami Yami no Mi. So when Blackbeard found it and ate the Yami Yami, he was already like, I know what this fruit can do, I know what I need to do with it. And then he was able to like master it pretty quickly. Same thing with Pizarro. Pizarro was like, meow, I want the island fruit, and he got it, and like, now I can do all this stuff, right? So that just gives him an idea there. So there's a curve with that. It also might be a thing where he has to spend a certain amount of time on the island to really assimilate with it. It might not be an instantaneous thing. It might not just be take one step on an island and he instantly can control anything. It might be like a virus. It might be like he steps on the island and then merges with it and then like slowly takes influence and control over the island. The larger the island is, it takes him more time. He spends a lot of his time on Hachinosu, and we don't know when he got his fruit. He could have got his fruit a year ago, 6 months ago, and he might have not have left the island since then. We haven't seen him leave. And if he does have the island fruit, it would make sense that he would stay on Hachinosu. So, like, the longer he stays on an island, the more control he has. And it might even reset, you know what I mean? Like if he ever leaves Hachinosu and goes somewhere else, then that control over the island dissipates and he would have to take it over all over again when he returns. So it might take a lot of time to take over, especially a very large island, okay? But a relatively small island like Hachinosu, and if, you know, he's there all the time anyway, it might only take a few days, maybe a week or so to completely control it like he does, okay? Speaking of leaving the island, this is a really powerful devil fruit, no questions, but it's completely powerless if he's not on an island. And as One Piece, most of it is, like I said, two big oceans, and you spend a lot of time on a ship. A ship is not an island. So if Avalo Pizarro was on one of Blackbeard's ships traveling, he would not be, I mean, not to say he wouldn't be able to fight at all, he's still strong, but he wouldn't be able to use his devil fruit because he's not on an island, okay? And then we start asking ourselves, what qualifies as an island? That's a fun question. Does a random rock in the middle of the ocean, just like a little area, just not even really, there's nothing growing on it, maybe it's just a rock in the middle of the ocean with some barnacles on it, does that count as an island? Does a little sandbar with like one single tree and a sad coconut, does that count as an island? So then I start looking into islands, and then I start getting into the idea. I was like, wait a second, whoa, wait a minute here, okay? Do continents count as an island? Like, because if you really think about it, an island is just a landmass that's completely surrounded by water, right? So like Iceland is an island. Hawaii is an island. The Hawaiian Islands, you know, New Zealand is an island, right? Okay. But then you start, like, zooming out a little bit, and it's like, wait a second. Australia is a landmass that's completely surrounded by water. And if we're being really just, if that's the limit to it, then, like, the Americas, you know, North and South America are one big landmass that are completely surrounded by water. The Afro-Eurasian continent, Africa, Europe, and Asia, is a big landmass that's completely surrounded by water. So, like, what's the limit here? And I looked into it, and really it is just that. It's just Australia is not considered an island because it's just too big. So in our world, there's just like a size limit. And that's something that we came up with, though. That's like just a definition that we decided upon. Like, okay, once a landmass gets big enough, it is not considered an island, it's considered a continent at that point. Now, I don't know exactly what the size is, but I'm going to use Australia as a benchmark, okay? So if you're larger or like as big or larger than Australia as just a unit of measurement, okay, it's just a baseline, you are considered a continent. If you're smaller than that, you're considered an island. Let's just go with that. Now, you might say, is like, well, that's just our definition of island, so Avalo Pizarro, he might be able to control a continent or something, maybe, given enough time. But then you also have to remember, going back to what Vegapunk said earlier in this arc, talking about devil fruits and how they come to be, he talks about human desire or human will, as if human will or desire or wishing or dreaming somehow creates devil fruits. We don't know the whole mechanism behind this, but that's the basic idea, like the general idea. Okay, well, if that's the case, then what humans consider as an island might actually be relevant to what the devil fruit actually affects. Because let's say the definition is similar in the One Piece world than it is not now. Like, if you get an island that's big enough, like the Red Line is technically an island. People brought that up. Like, could Avalo Pizarro merge with the Red Line? Well, like, okay. The Red Line has been considered many times. It's been called a continent. It's been called a mountain. It's never really been called an island. Oddly enough, well, okay. When Nami was explaining how the weather patterns in the New World work, she explained the Red Line is basically just a bunch of different kind of islands just crammed together with their different magnetic poles and their different climates and all that, right? Okay? Like Reverse Mountain was considered a winter island that has a winter climate, okay? So I guess technically speaking, in that sense, it was referred to as an island, but like a series of islands all mashed together. But it's very rarely never referred to as an island. It's referred to like the big red wall or a mountain or, you know, like the continent, the only continent in the One Piece world, right? So what if, though, however devil fruits are created, it goes by what human beings consider to be an island. And since most humans don't consider the Red Line to be an island, then the devil fruit does not affect the red line because it's not considered an island. Like, let's say the island fruit existed in our world based off of our definition of what an island is. You couldn't use it to affect Australia because it's a continent, but you could use it to affect Japan, which is an island. I guess that's the best way of me describing it, okay? Now, there are some other examples in the One Piece world beyond the red line. So I don't think Avalo Pizarro is just going to touch the red line and, like, I could just control all of Marijois, because you really feel like if he could have done that, like, that would have been Blackbeard's next step forward. Like, Zay-ha-ha-ha! Pizarro, you now have the power to control the red line. I want you to go to the red line, touch it at any random point, assimilate with it, and control the world! You know, like, you'd think he would have done that already, you know what I mean? So I don't think he can control the red line, okay? And even with larger islands, it takes longer to take over, okay? Okay, now, here are some other exemptions from this, or ones that would, like, some of these I'm 100% sure the island fruit would not affect. Others I'm like more like maybe. So somebody actually asked me in a I think it was the live stream I did yesterday, the post chapter live stream. Somebody asked me, what about Thriller Bark? And I'm like, oh no, Thriller Bark definitely would be able to be controlled by the island fruit. Thriller Bark was originally an island in the West Blue. I still don't know how to this day Moria got an island from the West Blue to the Paradise side of the Grand Line, because I don't think it's, maybe you could have crammed it up Reverse Mountain, but I don't know. That's a discussion for another day. He would have had to take it through Fishman Island, I guess, and get the whole island coated. I'm not really sure how that would have worked, but whatever. It is an island, though. It was an actual island that they just kind of outfitted with the mechanisms to make it a boat, a bark, which is considered, I think, a galleon or a big ship that has like 3 masts or more is considered a bark. So that's like Thriller Bark. Okay, so the island fruit would work on Thriller Bark. Okay, one island it definitely would not work on because it's not an island is Zoe. So obviously Zoe is not an island, it is an elephant, Zunisha. There is a country on its back, but it is not an island. So the minks are safe from Avalo Pizarro's island fruit, at least. Another island I'm pretty sure it would not work on is actually the Boeing Islands, or Stomach Baron. These are the islands that Heracles led a botany team to, and then they all died, and he was the only one left. And this is where Usopp got sent flying by Kuma, and where he got really fat, and then he got slimmed down, and he got some gains, and then he trained with Heracles for two years. So the Boeing Archipelago, or the Boeing Islands, are actually not islands at all. They're a series of carnivorous plants that are growing in the middle of the Grand Line that, like, lure sea creatures into the island and then devour them, okay? It's like the giant Venus flytrap monsters, basically, okay? So, living things, not an island, so I don't think it would work there. So, Heraclesan is safe. Don't worry about the minks being, like, Carrot's good, and Heraclesan's good. So if those were 2 of your favorite characters in One Piece, they're good. Don't worry about it, okay? Here's a question. Would it work on the Sabaody Archipelago? I only ask because the Sabaody Archipelago, once again, is not an island. It's a series of mangrove trees that are growing in this cluster that, like, they're just so big that their roots are massive enough that you could have, like, grass grow, and you could have people, like, building settlements and, like, amusement parks and stuff and concert halls on top of this mangrove, okay? But a lot of it is man-made, okay? Would it count as an island? I don't think it would. It doesn't have a magnetic charge. I don't think any island any location the Straw Hats have been to where the log does not work, like the log did not work at Sabaody, then I don't really think it would count as an island for the island fruit. Then again, the only islands that are magnetically charged are the ones in the Grand Line. The ones in the rest of the world, like the East Blue, are not magnetically charged. Now, obviously, Pizarro's fruit would work on, like, like the Gecko Islands, where Usopp is from, or the Dawn Island, where Luffy's from, okay? It would work there, but, wouldn't work on the Baratie, though. Any kind of artificial construct is not considered an island, so Zeph is safe. Okay, we're good. Whew. Zeph, Heraclesan, Carrot, all safe. Okay, good. Let's see here. Oh, this is, okay. I'm not sure about this one. Enies Lobby. All right, because looking at Enies Lobby, it's like, it makes my brain hurt. There is solid ground, but half of it is suspended over a giant chasm and the other isn't. Like, it makes me wonder, like, is Enies Lobby even, like, a natural occurring location? Or is it something that the government, like, built an island around? Like, the government saw this giant hole in the ocean, and they're like, we need to build a fortress around that. Like, there's solid ground there, but I have to wonder if that's naturally occurring or that was brought there later. You know what I mean? So, Enies Lobby is the one on this list where I feel like I'm pretty sure it wouldn't work on it definitely wouldn't work on Zoe. Maybe Sabaody. Definitely wouldn't work on the Boeing Islands, but Enies Lobby is kind of like, maybe it might work there. Impel Down is an artificial construct. It's not an island. I'm just trying to think, like, Marineford also is kind of like a built up, well, Marineford, I think, is built on an actual island. It's just extended a little bit from, like, the partisan wall and everything like that, you know, so it might work at Marineford. It might work there. But yeah, so there's definitely limits there. Okay, so you know, so now then what could Pizarro exactly do with this? You know, like, what could he actually do? Well, first and foremost, he can do everything Pika could do. Anything Pika could do. So Pika could make himself a giant amongst giants that, like, crushes the whole town. Pizarro could do that too. Pika rearranged the whole structure of Dressrosa in order to make it suit Doflamingo's needs. You know, Pizarro could do that as well, except now with the added benefit I threw out in the review, what if, like, there is a lake on the island? Pizarro might be able to just mold, not his real body, but make, like, the water swirl, and, like, he emerges from the water as an actual, like, water elemental, like, in the shape of Avalo Pizarro, like, meow, 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 you know, something like that. If there's a jungle on the island, he controls the trees, much in the same way that Aramaki could with the Mori Mori no Mi. Now, obviously, he wouldn't have all these abilities. Like, you know, Aramaki is able to, like, regrow himself with, like, the seeds of, you know, he can drop a seed and make his, like, duplicate body or, like, a clone body or something. Obviously, Pizarro wouldn't be able to do stuff like that, but he'd be able to control the trees, control the lake. Even if you want to say he could not control the actual water, like, form stuff out of the water, he could rearrange the like, rivers that flow into that lake or whatever waterway it is on the island. He could manipulate that. We saw him manipulating mountains very clearly in the last chapter. You know, so, like, provided a Pizarro did not immediately get knocked out from Garp's fist, you know, if he's still conscious somehow, like, I don't really see him doing, like, he could probably merge the island, like, turning the buildings and just, like, rearranging it into a big, like, here comes the giant fist! Here comes Garp's fist. Not a giant fist, but good enough. Better even. Bam! And so I can imagine just Garp just punching the crap out of these giant island fists. Garp's not going to have any issues here, right? But certainly, whatever island, like, eventually when the Straw Hats fight the Blackbeard Pirates, which is going to happen, whatever island they're on, Pizarro is going to have, like, be able to give Blackbeard home field advantage. Like, I could even see it now. Like, the Straw Hats are squaring up against the 10 Titanic captains, and then, like, they go to, you know, Zoro goes to cut Shiryu or something, and then all of a sudden, Avalo Pizarro has, like, his legs sink in the earth. Like, he turns the entire area into quicksand except where Shiryu is standing, and so, you know, Zoro's like, wait, what? And then Shiryu goes to stab him or whatever, right? And then Zoro has to cut off his legs for real this time, you know? So you can see that stuff. So Pizarro's definitely a threat, you know, no matter, unless Garp is there. That's the one exception to the rule. Like, he could try that with Garp. Like, you know, I will make you sink into the ground, meow, is like Garp just is slowly sinking in the quicksand. I would imagine Garp would allow that. Garp would just allow himself to be completely sunk in the ground by quicksand and begin to be crushed by the earth. And then all of a sudden you just cracks appearing in the ground and just boom, and then just Garp just busts through, you know, like it's gonna be something like that. Like, there's no way Pizarro's beating Garp. But anyway, yeah, Geography Island, Geography Fruit, that's insane. Sky Islands, could Avalo Pizarro control Sky Islands? I don't know, actually. I don't think he would unless it was made out of earth or Verth. So, like, Upper Yard, he would be able to control Upper Yard because that's land. But like I said, it might not be necessarily anything that's made out of earth. It might be some, because it you know, he was able to turn into, like, a wooden floor and stuff like that. So, like, stone and minerals is not, like, the prerequisite. It really seems the prerequisite is it's considered an island. So as long as most humans, or I guess whenever the fruit was created, is considered an island, it counts. So in that case, the Sky Islands are islands, so it works. Just like how if you fall into the White Sea, as a devil fruit user, you still can't swim, even though it's kind of a different sort of thing. You know what I mean? It's still made out of like evaporated water, but it's like a different layer, but it still works all the same to negate devil fruit abilities, okay? So I would say that, yeah, but going by that logic, you'd be able to control upper yard definitely, but like the Sky Islands are considered islands, so I would consider, yeah, he would be able to do that, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the only things like, what about like, for example, remember Duval? Duval's group, the Flying Fish riders, now the Rosy Life riders, they had like that oil rig. It wasn't an oil rig, but you know, it was similar to like that. It was like an artificial base they had outside of Sabaody that was like up on like wood and stilts and whatever. It's like supported, like suspended over the ocean, and that was kind of where they were hanging out. I don't think that Pizarro's fruit would work on something like that, or like an actual oil rig, or any kind of like artificial platform. Like that would be like the Baratier, and he couldn't control the Baratier. You know what I mean? So it's something like that, right? But anyway, yeah. Just wanted to do an initial video on this. I feel like we might have to talk more about this later when we find out some more stuff about it. But just like initial thoughts on that fruit. That's where it was. Geography is everything, all that. And now finally, by the way, we can get into turtle facts, which is something that I was going to do like a week ago and I never got around to it. Okay, here we go. It's time for some turtle facts. It's time for some turtle facts. Make an intro if you feel like it, but you gotta do it with the turtle facts. Okay, that didn't really work out the way I planned it, but yeah, it would be cool to do an intro to that beat, unless it gets copyrighted, which wouldn't be cool. But I'll tell you what, the coolest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series, which is it? It's the 2003 series, right? Yeah, it's the 2003 series. That was the best one. That was wild. Okay, anyway, time for some turtle facts. All right, so turtles are an order of reptiles. It is the end of a turtle fact. Okay, and contrary, I did know about this now. It wasn't the thing like snakes, where I'm like, do snakes have skeletons? Okay, and yes, they do. But when I was a kid, and I think a lot of people felt this too because of cartoons and everything, I always assumed that a turtle shell was like a separate thing from their body. Like, if a turtle really wanted to, he could just, like, or she could leave the shell, like, whenever they wanted to. Like, it was a separate thing. But no, the shell is, in fact, part of their bodies. There are, broadly speaking, two categories here. Side-necked turtles and hidden-necked turtles. And it depends on how they retract into their shell. Some turtles can retract fully into their shell, like, completely, like, really in there. Others can't really pull their head in too much, but they have better, like, neck movement outside of their shell. Here's a turtle's, like, you know, a skeletal structure and exactly where everything is put and, like, located there. There's about 360 species of turtles. Some of those are recently extinct, but that's like the general number in the last few decades. They are one of the few, so they do not lay their eggs in the water, surprisingly enough. There are sea turtles. There are turtles that live on land. There are tortoises. And then there are sea turtles that spend most of their life in the ocean, but they do not lay their eggs in the ocean. I think most people know that they go up on sea, on shore, on some sandy beach somewhere, and then they lay eggs, and then they bury them in the sand, and then I guess they just say, okay, kids, hope you don't get eaten, and then go back into the water, and then that's it. Actually, where I figured out that fact, where I found that out, this is going to be a blast of the past. Any 90s kid, I hope they're still reading this book in schools, because it was one of my favorite book series growing up in, like, elementary school. Some of you might already know which one it is. Which book series am I talking about before I even say it? Okay. It's Hatchet by Gary Paulson, which is a great film. It was a film. I actually saw the film. It wasn't that great, but it was a film. So Hatchet by Gary Paulson, story about a kid that gets, stranded in the Canadian wilderness after a plane crash. The pilot gets a heart attack and he dies, and then plane crashes in the lake, and this kid has to survive on the lake shore for a few months. There was a bunch of sequels. Well, anyway, in the first book, I think it was in the first book, Brian is, like, starving because he's like a 12-year-old kid or whatever, and he doesn't know how to survive in the wild, and he can't, like, catch any food or whatever, and he's starving. And then one night he hears something on the beach of the lake, and then he wakes up the next day, and a turtle had actually come up from the lake and laid its eggs in the sand, and then Brian finds the turtle eggs and then eats them, and it's just like he gets some sustenance. So that's where I found out that fact about turtles laying eggs on the beach. So there's that. That's the first turtle fact, and also the first Gary Paulson fact. That's it. Actually, underrated Gary Paulson books, because let's talk about that for a moment. I love the, Hatchet, Brian's Winter, Brian's Return. There was the River. I think there was like the timeline splits with that series. It's crazy. There's like a what if Brian was in the winter or whatever. That's a good series. But there's two other books I would highly suggest if you have not read them from Gary Paulson, okay? One is called The Transale Saga, which is essentially an isekai novel. It's basically, imagine like the survivalist. It starts out like Hatchet, with a kid that's like traveling the desert in like the Mojave Desert or whatever, and it's like starting out as like a survival kind of novel, and then boom, he just gets struck by lightning and gets isekai'd into a fantasy world. Okay, and then it's just like, well, we learn about more of that as it goes. Okay, so that's a great one, The Transale Saga. And then the next one is The Car, which is a book about a kid that his parents just leave one day. Like, his parents would always fight, and it's like one day his dad is just like, I'm leaving, don't tell your mom. And then the mom's like, I'm leaving, don't tell your dad. And this kid's just left alone at his house. And so he has this like car that he was working on. And so he builds this car, like this old 1936 kind of like, Bearcat car or whatever. And then he gets into it, and then he just drives across America, and no one seems to question it. And he runs into like two Vietnam War veterans, and then they get into adventures. It's a good book. I liked it. Anyway, so, yeah, that's, turtle facts, geography facts, and Gary Paulson facts. Have a great night, everybody.